Hello everyone, this is Tracy Carmack and I am going to make a separate video on my personal story just so that you have a reference, so I don't have to take the time in the actual presentation if you want to know more details and have more of a background. So I'm going to start with just giving you a short kind of description here of who I am. My bacteriology degree, Bachelor of Science, is from Moscow, that would be Idaho. Microbiome honors at the University of Glasgow. I worked for Pharmacia Diagnostics in Sweden for 2 years. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist, and let me move all this so I can read the rest. I've, while I was raising children, a traditional naturopath and transitioned to nutraceutical sales. After 30 years in Texas, I moved to Idaho and to become an organic farmer and rancher, and found that they triple egg herbicide spray 3 times a year on all 3 sides of my property for the different farmers. 8 out of the 10 neighbors have, I can tell you their names and the type of cancers that they have. And in 2016, I began researching microbiome. I knew that there was a connection between the microbiome of the soil caused by the herbicides, reducing the diversity of gut microbes, and at that time there was very little information. I did attend my IAACN meeting, and that's where I met Kiran Krishnan, and for the first time I heard a credible microbiologist speaking about microbiome science, and that's the connection, how I became involved with microbiome labs. After that point, I tried to affect the local community, attended a lecture by a physician in Orofino, Idaho, and he made the statement that Roundup is so safe you can coat your tongue with it. As you can imagine, he and I had words. I just, at the end of his lecture, pointed out the research that contradicted everything he said. The forest on the border of our property is sprayed by the air with herbicide, and I can show you some evidence here of what I found in the forest. By the way, this is near where we live. It's the reservoir called Dworshak Reservoir. This is the reason my family came to Idaho, was the building of that dam. This is Peggy Sue, and that's her calf, Bully. This is showing, just examples of what I mean by spraying. This is how they typically spray the crops. In northern Idaho, it's the pea and lentil capital of the world. That includes the garbanzo beans, and all of those are doused 3 times, like I said. And there's a short growing season up here, so the last spraying is really just to dry the wheat grains or the peas so that they can harvest it before the rains. This is what I meant. The entire forest border was roped off with these signs posted, herbicide application. So they spray the forest to remove the undergrowth so that the logging sleds can clear cut the forest. Okay, so I just wanted to give you some reference for what I was talking about. And just know that, I am an activist at heart, and the destruction of the soil microbiome, the cancer that the neighbors contracted, led us on a quest, and I involved my husband, Ken Whiteman, who's also a naturopath. He had a practice in Grapevine, Texas, and packed up and moved it because I wanted to, live in remote Idaho, and he set up a practice in Orofino. And Microbiome Labs has been doing extremely well, so he is involved now as a rep for Microbiome Labs. Our plan was to spend the summers in Idaho and the winters in Texas, and our first attempt at being snowbirds was the fall of 2019. And during that time, during the summer, Ken was trained as a rep, went to Florida. When he came back, he had what we thought was a sinus infection and a small pea-sized lump in his lymph gland. And by the time we went down to Texas, this had grown from pea size to marble size, and then by the time we got to Texas, it was a golf ball size. So we went to the ENT. That's where we received the unhappy news that it was a squamous cell carcinoma. And at that point, we tried to do everything natural we could. Of course, we have been involved in functional medicine for the last 15 years. So we did probably 20 rounds of high dose vitamin C IV, ozone shots, detoxifications, probably, $20,000 worth of different supplements and treatments. Nothing was slowing this thing down. And because it was in his throat and interfering with his swallowing, speech, and breathing, my concern was, would this tumor, block his airway? So we decided to go conventional. First, we did the Greek test. It said that cisplatin would be effective, and that was confirmed. And the radiologist also said that he gave us a 95% positive outcome. So we started treatment January 6th of 2020. He entered the hospital to receive his chemo port, and unfortunately the intubation tube snagged the friable tumor in his throat, and he had an emergency tracheotomy. So that was not pleasant. And he finished the 7 weeks of chemoradiation. Fortunately, it was successful. His weight loss, however, was extreme. And after treatment, he ended up getting a PEG tube or feeding tube. But we are, 3.5 months out of treatment. His PET scan is negative. But what all of that to say is that we tried to report on the cancer cluster that was happening in Idaho. We didn't intend on becoming part of it. How much effect? We don't know. Most of the oncologists will tell you there's an incidence of 3. It could be his history living with smokers, so secondhand smoke. It could be viral. It could be mycotoxin. It just takes 3, and he had exposure to all of those. So how much the glyphosate, the Roundup, triggered, we don't know. And you can't prove it. There's a lot of glyphosate cases being litigated in our courts, but it really they're only covering really the Roundup that you spray in your yard or if it's your job to be a road, spraying the sides of the road or as a janitor. It doesn't cover what, big ag or the agricultural applications being sprayed from the air. So we will never know, probably. So I just go into that to let you know kind of our background. that we're passionate about what we do. This is affecting our families directly, and we believe it's affecting yours. You may or may not realize that. And gut health is really at the core of all, chronic illness. And we think we're most effective helping practitioners who then can meet face to face and share this information, share this education, and use products that are effective and make a difference. So that's all for now. Reach out. We're happy to help. Take care. Bye-bye.